Okay. Okay. 2 years ago, the United Nations had a World Summit on education, on transforming education. And the thing that really came out is the education system and even the education goals that we've been following for the past couple of centuries, actually, are really no longer applicable or no longer where we need to be targeting. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that because if we begin to realize that we have to focus on lifelong learning and having everybody be an independent learner, that's different than trying to go and make sure everybody understands algebra and chemistry and so forth. So we'll talk about that. Hi, Sid. Uh, Sid, I was looking because the week before last, you had raised the question about whether AI is going to take over all jobs. And we never really got to answering that for you. You had raised some speculated that there's a number of jobs that it's not going to be able to take over, or that it's not going to take over within a certain amount of time. I was looking to try to answer you on WhatsApp here, and I wasn't able to find you.
Oh,
Uh, are you connected with me on WhatsApp?
I'm not sure. I will,
Uh-huh.
I will send you a message today.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna post here in the WhatsApp. Uh,
Okay.
okay. So we'll touch upon that. That's not the main
Okay.
focus of today's meeting.
Right.
Well, it's related because the future of jobs is going to have a big implications on how people look at education.
Correct.
If there's no jobs, we know right now, at least in the developed world, or at least the United North America, 80% of all university students are there primarily to prepare themselves for a career. In other words, for jobs. And if those jobs are not there, it's going to raise a very interesting question. What happens to university education? In fact, I saw a panel discussion. I think it was the presidents of Harvard and MIT were both on the panel. And they basically said they didn't expect the university model to survive 10 years out from where they were. And that was a couple of years ago that was. I think it was a World Economic Forum panel discussion. So and we will look at that because obviously that's very related to what's the motivation behind education or what kind of education do we need to be serving up. And of course, the whole economic model of education, especially less so in Europe, let's say, than here in the United States. But here in the United States, people come away, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on getting higher education because they say that's going to go and get me a job that's going to be able to pay me so much that I'll be able to pay those loans back. And that the question is that model, how long that model is able to survive.
I
Okay.
was
Yes, go ahead.
many, many moons ago when I was in my college in Texas. The professor asked a question, what is the purpose of education? And everybody, um, you know, said whatever they wanted to say. Mostly was to get a job and, better your life and things like that. But she did not like the answer. She said the purpose of education is to be aware of how unaware we are.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's one of the way to rethink what is the purpose. And obviously, the current model or the way they are teaching in colleges, it will eventually will change. Hopefully, you don't require to take all those courses to get a 4-year degree or whatever. So it may be more focused on your path in, for employment as well as learning. Uh, so yeah, it
Yeah.
can be very interesting.
What's it's also universities are going to get hit from two sides. One side is going to be if there are no jobs, and we have to look. This past summer has been the worst year for college graduates to be able to get jobs because AI is destroying all the entry level jobs. And so we've got the highest unemployment. In fact, the unemployment among college graduates just passed the unemployment of non-college graduates. This is happening very quickly from that side. But from the other side, we are seeing here that start at all levels of education, that artificial intelligence is delivering education. They're outperforming the traditional education model. So the question is, okay, do I attend a physical university or even an online university that does traditional types of lectures and things like that? Or do I participate in this self-learning where I have something like Conmigo, a AI education companion that literally helps me master whatever it is I want to master in such a fraction of the time. And eventually we see that the credentialing and the knowledge acquisition split into two distinct paths. So that we'll see that just like you have now for medicine or law, where you need to have a state exam beyond what you have in your universities, or in the certification that you see in certain industries, especially high-tech industries, where you have vendor companies providing certifications, that eventually we'll see that the whole process of being able to prove to others what you know or what you're capable of is separated from where you acquire the skills or where you acquire the knowledge. So that it's going to be very interesting to see how that evolves. Hello, Ingrid. Glad you could join us today. Uh, so anyway, we'll get into what time. Oh, well, we're in the time frame. We can begin now. Oh, well, Ingrid just showed up, so now we can begin. So, ding, I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global eClub, and I declare this meeting of 25 October 2025 to be open. The Before I begin, I just want to apologize for last week having to pull a short-term cancellation of our meeting. That was because I had a little medical procedure the day before, or a couple days before, and I was not able to really talk and or sit around for a couple of hours. So that I just figured, okay, well, we'll just postpone that one. So at any rate, though, but today, normally we would have definitely focused on artificial intelligence because it's been now 2 weeks, and these have been a hugely impactful 2 weeks with regards to AI capabilities coming out. The rumors about Gemini 3.0 and about ChatGPT 6 are just running rampant right now. We've seen a number of significant upgrades in Gemini in the capability. We've seen Claude come out with Claude Skills, where you can plug in thousands of functions of things it can do, and you can link that with the AI so the AI can be interpreting what's happening around the world and then invoke various skills to be able to do various things and making that very easy. We've seen in ChatGPT mode, agent mode. I demonstrated that 2 weeks ago, but that was just like brand new. Had just shown up. I didn't see any announcements about it And I was just wondering here when I was in ChatGPT, what the heck is this agent mode there? And if you recall, I gave it a try. So I just said, hey, can you go into this site that provides, gives you the capability of looking up all kinds of education information about all the different states in the country, down to every single school throughout the entire United States, and being able to compare those schools on so many different categories on the number of students at each level, the poverty level of the students, the number of students that qualify for special programs, the test scores of the students, the student teacher ratio, how many teachers in general. It just is just a wealth of information that they've gathered, but it's like huge. It's all over the place. You've got to you can go to the site yourself and you can search for stuff, but it's very time consuming to go and figure out where do I go and how do I pull out the information. And you got to go through many, many, many pages of information to find what you're particularly looking for. And so I said, what the heck? I turned on the and went to ChatGPT. I turned on the agent mode and I simply said, okay, hey, can you go to this website? And I want you to go and find for me, I want you to analyze all that wealth of information over what must be literally hundreds, if not thousands of pages on the website. Go and analyze all that information and bring out for me uh, certain details and compare those details among a small number of schools that meet these criteria, which is a complicated thing. And so I asked it to do that. And I couldn't believe it here. It goes, it finds the website, it opens the website, and I watched, you could literally watch it as it navigated from page to page. And it says, okay, I'm now looking for this. Now I'm looking for that. Now I'm looking for this. Now I'm going to compare this. And it took a while, 20, 30 minutes, but I'm watching this and it came back and it really gave me the answers of what I was looking for. So this was like I'd never seen anything like that in terms of being able to have the AI go and navigate across all these multiple pages. Since then, I've actually gone and said, do similar things where I don't even know what the website is. I don't even know if there is a website that has the kind of stuff I'm looking for. And so I just click on agent mode and tell it, go find a website that has, or websites that have this kind of information, and go and dig out the information, compare the information, analyze the information, and give me the answers to these questions. And sure enough, it's done it. So anyway, that's just an example of the kinds of things that are coming out. And now we have, as of a couple of days ago, ChatGPT Atlas was announced. ChatGPT Atlas is ChatGPT's browser. They came out with a browser of their own that has AI built right into the browser. So now you can go and you can ask it all kinds of crazy things. Now, I haven't been able to try it myself because it's only available right now on Apple Macintosh. That was the first thing. I think this is a way they figured, we can constrain the early usage so we can observe and see if there are problems by limiting it to a relatively rare number of computers that are out there because the Apple Macintosh, we're not talking here the cell phones, the Apple cell phones, that's iOS, not available yet. Android, not available yet. Windows, not available yet. So I think that was why they did that. But we're looking here, they say within 1 to 2 weeks, it will be available on all those platforms. And it's going to be, well, on the Apple, at least right now, it's available in all the world, everywhere in the world, for anyone that has a paid account. That means even a $20 account, that's enough. But I suspect they're going to make that available to all. But the demos of what people have been able to do with it is amazing. And this sort of matches up with where Perplexity, when they release Comet, that's their AI-driven browser. I suspect that Google is going to have to upgrade Chrome. We know we have already Gemini in Chrome, but I'm sure they're going to be looking here at what Atlas is able to do and any features that Atlas is able to do that are not yet available in the Gemini for Chrome. I'm sure they're going to make that available very, very shortly. So anyway, so I was explaining why we're not focusing on AI, and all I've been talking about so far is really AI stuff. So the main focus for today, though, was to talk about education. And part of the reason for that is there's a group here in New Jersey where I'm located that was founded by a billionaire to study education and see what's going on. And they found here that in the United States, we have a huge problem that the test scores, when we get national test scores or any official test scores, the results are much, much worse than what the schools are assigning as grades to students. In other words, the schools are saying, oh, this student has an A or a B, which is the top level students. And yet, when they're tested here on any of these official tests, they're coming out that they've got maybe a C or a D or even worse. And so I started working with AI to say, well, what's going on here? Why are we seeing such a disparity between the knowledge level of students when they're measured by outside forces as opposed to what is they're being told internally? And so that started me looking at that. And then that started also looking at seeing where has there been any significant improvement in education results. And the results of that were shocking, I would say, at the least. Here in the United States, we've often talked about Mississippi. Oh, that's the example. That's the model of the worst education you can imagine. That's Mississippi. And up until a few years ago, that was true. Mississippi in 2013 was 49th out of 50 countries, 50 states in the United States. It was ranked 49th in the ability of fourth graders to read. But by 2019, they had reduced that. They were in ninth place in the country. In other words, they jumped from 49th to ninth in just 6 years. And during that time frame, the percentage of students that were considered proficient in reading at fourth grade improved by 50%. A 50% improvement in the percentage of students able to read. So this sort of has been talked up recently or in the last decade or so as the Mississippi miracle. The miracle that you could have such a fantastic improvement in education in a relatively short time frame. Now, not getting into how they did it, and which, mm, well, I will say this: they did implement a couple of things. They put until 2013, they had social promotion. That means if you survived the year, you were a year older, you went on to the next grade. It didn't make any difference what you knew or didn't know, or what you received on scores and so forth. So everybody just got promoted from year to year, whether they had the knowledge or did not have the knowledge. And in 2013, they implemented a rule that you were not able to go on to fourth grade if you had not mastered third grade subjects to a particular level, especially reading. And since the testing is at fourth grade, this dramatically reduced the number of unqualified fourth graders that would be taking the test. And the other thing they did was that they really beefed up the support for helping students learn to read before the end of third grade. And so these two things contributed. But the primary thing that did it was saying, no more social promotion. If you don't have the knowledge, you cannot go on to fourth grade. And it was interesting because some other states looked at that and said, wow, yeah, let's do that. So, for example, Oklahoma, which also historically has very low education achievement results, they implemented basically the same rule. You cannot go from third to fourth grade if you do not have the knowledge. They got such a pushback, political pushback from the population that they did show for the first couple of years they did that. They also showed great improvement in the test results for fourth grade. But the politicians got worried, and so after a couple of years, they reversed that law and they went back to social promotions. And the results for the state went downhill so fast, so that just a couple of years after reversing that law, that they were worse off nationally on test scores. They were worse off than they were before they had implemented that law ending social promotion. So, but anyway, those are the things that they did that caused the results. But that's not the main thing that I really wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is here because in Mississippi, everybody's saying, you're the Mississippi miracle. This is so amazing what you've accomplished. We need to do this everywhere. And when I looked into it, I said, okay, great. What is it in absolute numbers? They had 50% improvement in the percentage of children that were proficient from in fourth grade. So I looked, they had increased from 21% to 32%. So I said, wait a minute. That means you are failing two out of every three fourth graders is still not proficient. And proficient is the level where the testing people say that's the level where you have the reading skills that you need to be successful in the other subjects, all the other subjects at that grade level. So if you're not proficient, that means you're going to have trouble achieving the grade level in all your other subjects. And this really holds true when you look at the math side of the testing, because the math side of the testing, the results of really fall way down, especially when you compare it to a state or local level testing, when you compare it to the national testing. And the reason why is because a lot of the school testing says, here's a long division problem. Can you solve this long division problem? Can you solve this multiplication problem? Whereas the tests are looking, can you apply math knowledge to real situations? And so it describes situations and it asks you, based on a word problem, to be able to figure out what the mathematical result would be. And the problem is that so many of the students don't have the reading skills to understand the problems. So that first thing hit me to say, wow, two out of every three can't don't have the reading skills to be fully capable of doing grade level work on pretty much any subject. Then I said, okay, well, that's the top end. Proficient or above is sort of the top end. And then the next level down is basic. Well, they have the basic capability of being able to read. Okay. But then there's a thing called below basic. In other words, you haven't even achieved basic reading skills. That in the description here of some of the announcements that came out this year because of the horrendous results that we have nationally right now in reading, they describe that as being able, not able to necessarily understand the gist or what the meaning of a simple written text, a couple of sentences. And if you don't have those, if you're not even at that basic level, you can't understand what the sense of a simple text is. And so I said, okay, well, how does that look? Well, it turns out that Mississippi, the miracle of education state, there are more students that don't even achieve the basic level than achieve the proficient level. In other words, you've got basically more than a third of the students in Mississippi who do not even achieve basic reading skills by fourth grade. And this last year, the news on education was shocking because the United States, I think for the first time, passed the 40% mark. That 40% of fourth graders nationwide throughout the entire country do not even have basic reading skills. So the what does that tell us? What it tells me is that Mississippi went and said, look at this, a 50% improvement. Well, imagine here that they only had 2% of students who were achieving grade level. And if they went to 3%, they would be going, we got a 50% improvement. Look, we're great. So it goes back to setting goals. To what is your goal? Is your goal to go and educate all students, or is your goal to be a little better than last year? And this is very crucial because it's common knowledge. You can't hit what you don't aim for. So if all you aim for is to get a little better than you were last year, that's very different from saying, how do I get to achieving here, getting close to 100% of education success? Um, there was, in our manifesto for our club, we say, don't set your goals based on what you think you can do. Set your goals based on what's needed. Because we believe that when you strive or stretch to do what you don't know how to do, that's when you grow the most. So we're saying here, you've got to set the goals. The goals are where everything starts. So if Mississippi had gone and said, our goal is to have at least 70% of our students be proficient instead of 32%, that would really be amazing. That would be worthwhile. That would be something we say, okay, everybody needs to do that. But we have on a national level, we have only one state in the United States that has 40% of its students proficient. Not 41 even, 40. And all the rest, for the other 49 states are less than 39, less than 40%. So the first thing is we need to, on education, we need to set those goals based on what's needed and then apply ourselves to figure out how do we get there. Google used to have this thing called Google X. This is where the self-driving car came out of that, and a lot of breakthrough technologies. And the attitude of Google at the time was, you should go and always make sure you set your goals so high that no current solution approaches can achieve the goal because that forces you to think outside the box. And that is what we see here in the schools. I believe nobody's doing that. When a school goes and says, we need to hire a new headmaster or a new principal, do they ask them, do you have a plan? What's your plan of how you're going to raise the education outcomes for your students to close to 100%? I don't think they ask that. I think they're afraid to ask that because they think if they ask that, nobody's going to be confident that they can have that kind of impact. Nobody will take the job. But if
Bill, I
yeah.
just want to say that what you just said about Google setting the goals so high, the whole terminology of cloud computing
Mhm.
came from that because they were trying to solve a problem of storage and somebody says we're now in the clouds and they're like and literally that's how oh, so how do we get there? And so
Yeah,
we use that terminology. Yeah, it's on the cloud in computing, but that's the goal was set so high that people are like, okay, that doesn't exist. We're in the clouds here.
right.
And so
Yeah,
just for an example.
and when we think when we go and say um, on average, the percentage of proficient students in schools across the country is somewheres maybe in the 20s, the low 20% mark. So, we should be setting goals to quadruple, to quadruple the education outcomes. And if you go and ask the education system, do you have a plan? Do you have an idea of how you could quadruple the education results? I don't think you would get many answers today because most people,
So I wanted to ask you regarding your research. Um, I know the U.S. is that there seem to be hooked on grades, and I think they get money if you're. Oh, what was I going to say? Yeah, but anyway, grading rather than learning is the biggest thing. So, did your research identify it wasn't just the content of education, but learning styles? That's
yeah.
the issue as well.
Well, that's now as we get into looking at the
Okay.
results because uh, in most cases here, well, we're trying to see did education succeed? Did the learner acquire the knowledge that we're saying that the education system should be conveying to them by certain points, certain checkpoints? And the answer is no. Now, this is, if we're thinking, oh, well, that's an American problem. Germany, Dietmar, you might recall 2 years ago, I think it was 2023, the papers, or no, maybe it was last year. No, I think it was 2023. The papers in May, I think, were full with the headline that one out of every four fourth graders in Germany was not able to read effectively. And that was the result of the nationwide test in Germany. So we see this is not just a local problem. The problem in itself is not the thing that's bad. What's really bad is what are we doing about it? Do we set the goals to say how do we get to 100%, or are we setting the goals to say, oh, gee, how do we get a little better? And if we're looking and seeing here that okay, uh, I can jump from being 49th to ninth place among 50 states, and I say, wow, I'm now among the best schools in the country and recognizing that they only succeed with one-third of their students. Now that's statewide because we know in New Jersey, when we looked, we see the top 10% of elementary schools, they are over 90% of students are proficient. But the bottom 10%, the average is only 6% of students are proficient. So that's why when we take the average across the state, when we look at a state level, we see here the result that it's only about one-third of students achieve proficiency in reading by fourth grade. And by the way, it gets worse by eighth grade. When time comes to the eighth grade testing, even fewer students are proficient at that level for reading. So the thing that I'm looking at then is saying, um, okay, so what do we do about it? And I think the first thing here is we need to set the goal to get all students proficient. At the same time, we have to recognize that there is this major shift in the purpose of education. Okay, what is the purpose? What should be the primary goal of education? Should it be that you're competent in algebra and biology and chemistry? Or should it be that you're proficient and competent in knowing how to learn and being an effective independent learner? Because when you're 30 years old, there's no teacher looking over your shoulder saying, you need to do this, now do that, then do this. So you've got to be in a position that you're confident in your ability to learn anything at any time. And the tools are becoming available. The AI tools on education, they're already absolutely amazing. If you look anybody trying to learn languages, that I can sit there and be talking to an avatar or talking to a coach, an AI coach that understands exactly where I am in the learning process of that language and is able to guide me pedagogically effective so that I'm not just memorizing some stuff, but I'm really learning to master that particular language. The amount of time it takes with having that kind of educational support, it just breaks the mold of all the ways we've taught languages in the past. And that applies across the board here, having that personal tutor that can help you understand because it's got the emotional intelligence to understand, to recognize when you're understanding something or when you're not understanding it. And so we're seeing that the tools to help you learn anything are getting better and better and better. The question is, have you learned to use them, or are you in the current mode? You're just sitting there waiting for somebody to tell you what you need to know. And this is a major shift that we're going to need. But the key thing, so we need everybody to be a personal striver to strive to learn what they need to know. And somebody raised the question here, well, what do you need to know? It's different from the current education system where we say, well, we need everybody to read everything. So, hey, let's go and make sure everybody reads Mark Twain. Somebody put that in the chat. And it's not about that. It's right now because one size fits all. We pick these general examples and we say, okay, use that to learn something. But in the future, you're going to be able to, if you have that belief in your ability to learn, and you recognize the need to learn something or have the desire to learn something, you're going to be able to do that. But if you are used to, well, I don't do anything unless somebody tells me to do it, which is the way our current education system works, you probably will never have learned how to go and find the tools that can help you. You probably never learned how to use them effectively. So that's something here that has to change as well. But the basic thing here is it starts with the goals. Do we have, are we really pursuing the goals? So if I'm in a school that's never gotten more than 6% in the last 10 years, never got more than 6% of its students to be at grade level by whatever grade, as long as I get that 6 or 7% to be at grade level, it's good enough. I'm okay as a teacher. I don't have to go and to myself be saying, "Oh wow, I didn't get 100% of my students to be successful." So it starts off, I believe, with setting the goals, accepting the goal is to come up with a way to achieve the needed outcomes. The second thing here, yes, Dieter or Dietmar.
Yes, very nice, very interesting. I would like to add something. Learning, it's about, let's say, facts, algebra, biology, physics, something like that. But it's also learning how to deep dive in a topic. So when I remember when I was in at university, I learned a lot of things I've never used in my professional life. But then looking back, I learned how to handle a complicated topic, to dive in, to learn the necessary things to pass the exam in a short time, in a given time. And this is, I think, also very important to learn this because
Mm.
in professional life you often have this situation, a new topic, a new situation. You have to gather information, and this is also learning and education.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
what you said, actually, what you said is very important because you're basically saying that you were learning how to learn. You were using the examples they gave you to learn how to learn. One of the things that we're seeing with AI that universities in particular are complaining about is the students are using AI to avoid learning how to learn. In other words, they're saying, AI, hey, write this essay for me. Go and do this research and create the report for me. So that gets back to the point, is the education system here assigning busy work, or is it really going and focusing on helping you learn how to learn? There's a famous educator, Ralph. What's his last name? He's the founder of the African Leadership University. And one of the things that he points out is the difference between just in time learning versus just in case learning. And that the education system that we have today, for the most part, is just in case. We teach you all kinds of stuff because maybe you might need it some point in your future. When you learn algebra and you learn all of these things, there's so much of that here that I learned along the way I've never used. But the key thing here is that if you come across a situation and a problem, do you know how to address the problem? Do you know how to break the problem down and find a solution? And that really is where we need to focus. But regardless of the focus, we still need the goal to say is the purpose of education to be able to say, congratulations, you're 18 years old. You finished your education here because you're 18 years old, not because you know something, but because you're 18 years old. And do we set the goals? Sid, you want to add something?
Yes, your desires and objectives for this conversations are great. And in relation to AI, I'm a big fan of homeschooling. And I've been promoting the last few years with the people that I know, even though there's a lot of resistance towards it. And AI fits right into it. However, there's a huge problem of economic disparity. Our goal should be not 10 from going from 6% to 9%. It should be 100%. But the economic disparity is putting people back. And that's why more than 50% of the world population is so far behind. And we can find the reasons, military, uh, industrial complex, and all those things can come into play. But there's a great opportunity at the same time with AI. But of course, you need to have tools. You need to have buy-in from the parents, and you need to have enough food on the table on those houses so they can think about education after the meal.
Mhm.
That's all.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very valid point, and it's one of the ones that educators, can you hold educators responsible for the lack of economic equality among students? And if not, if we go and set our goals and we say our goal is to achieve 100% education outcome equality, then we have to say, we know, for example, that economic disparity, one of the big measures in schools, is absenteeism. The absenteeism among students of the lower socioeconomic categories is much, much higher. In some cases, the absenteeism rate is approaching 50%. With that, that's not 50% of students are missing, but that, according to whatever the benchmark is. But I've attended a high school. I went to a high school to speak to that high school in the Bronx in New York. And the school officials told me on any given day, one-third of students don't show up. And so if you're a teacher and you go and say, okay, that two-thirds of my students have missed one of my previous three classes. What do I do? Do I just ignore that and go on with what's on the schedule? How do I deal with that? So the question is, though, if I set the goal to say that I have to achieve 100% of knowledge, not of age, of knowledge, then the question is, I need an education system that works successfully even when students are only sporadically coming to school. Now that changes the whole game. If we're going and saying our goal is the outcome, right now in our education system, there, if you go and ask any of the AI, how do we improve the education system? I invariably you will get back that we have to get rid of the school calendar and we have to get rid of teaching. Okay. And we have to switch to mastery-based education, where students only progress as they've mastered prerequisite knowledge. It's known. But why is it that we don't do it? It's because our education system thinks the measure of success is what the teachers do rather than what the students acquire. And so now that we're starting to get that measurement on what the students are acquiring, that we're saying, oh, well, what are we going to do about it? We end up with a situation where the politicians go out there and say, the cause of our bad education outcomes is our teachers. If we look at the less successful schools, we think it's the teachers, they didn't do a good enough job. The teachers and the educators turn around saying, it's the society. If you didn't get the equality and you didn't get the parental mindset that's needed, we can't do it. So you need to fix society and then we can succeed in education. And the politicians are saying, you need to fix education, then we can fix the problems in society. And we're just not going anywhere. So it's getting down to saying, okay, the educators, we need the educators to start to look at their situation and saying, hey, I've got this goal. The goal is I got to get 100%. Well, the students that are walking in my door at kindergarten are 2 years behind in verbal vocabulary and mental maturity. It's unfair that you hold me to the same standard as a teacher teaching in a wealthy suburban community where 90% of their students starting kindergarten are 1 or more years ahead of expectations. But the question is, okay, but that's what the challenge is. Okay, so teacher, Here's your goal. Your goal is this high, impossible thing. You can't use any of the standard solutions that you're used to today. None of those are going to achieve the goal. So put your heads together and start to think that, okay, what can you do to achieve those goals? And we see it's possible. We look at Finland and we can see that Finland implemented some things. They won't, I don't see anybody talking about it today. But back in the early 2000s, Finland, which up until that point had the same kind of test results as the United States. They're somewhere around 30th in the world in most academic subjects. And they implemented a three-phase thing. One was raising um, the the standards for teaching. The second was that they implemented preschool starting at 6 months of age. And at the time, there were a lot of reports. Why did you do that? And they said to reduce the influence of parents who were not good parents, because they found that was a major factor on the disparity when kids were going into kindergarten. So by taking those kids and having all kids from age 6 in those shaping years, in those first early childhood years, those kids all hit first grade. They were by then independent learners. They accepted that they were responsible for their own education. And there's a lot of interesting anecdotes about exchange students from Finland hitting the United States, and the United States saying, okay, homework is something that's almost like a discipline issue. So we make sure that you do something. And the Finnish students say, why should I do something? I know that. I don't need to go and do that homework. I already know that material. Why are you wasting my time? So it's interesting on that. But the bottom line is, if
Bill,
you
I
take,
wanted to
yeah,
ask,
yes.
has there been a comparative study between um, p- kids the same age between going to school and being homeschooled?
Oh,
And
yeah. Homeschooling is by and large much more effective.
yeah,
Uh,
because like I just wondered, I haven't done any research on it, but I mean, I tell people all the time from my own experience. My daughter just told me a few months ago she thinks that I'm autistic, and I said, well, I was always called artistic. And so, but I was one of those students that I grew up, first of all, my first 9 years being outside, and I found it very difficult to be in a room when I came to Canada, like in a room with a little window, and it was just horrendous for me. But my teachers were so fantastic that they literally took a personal interest in me. I was the only non-white in the school as well, just for the record. And I missed more school, going to school, the days than going to school. And I was called down. I was telling my son-in-law the other day, I said I was called down to the principal's office. I think I was here like 6 months, and in boarding school, if you're called down to the principal's office, you're it's bad. And I never was because I was a good girl, as they say. And so I was called down, and he was surprised that I was allowed to, that I hadn't seen him before because I had missed so many days in school. And so he asked me, he says, well, why is this? And I said, well, I don't understand why I have to be in the school when I do the work. And I passed my test and I wrote my essay and I got an A plus, of which he was stunned, like literally stunned. I had gone through the work before, like 2 years before, and I was so bored and so like, what is this of kids my own age, right? And he just, I think, gave up. I never was called again, but I never went to school all the 5 years I was there. I missed more school than before. But the point I was trying to make was that it's a functionality. I couldn't function that well in that closed space because I'm even like that today. I hate closed spaces. Um, so, but what is a teacher to do I grew up in Jamaica for the first few years, so it's warm and you can be outside, and they used to take you outside, and it was very enjoyable. And I'm not quite sure I have the answer for North America, because Canada is in the same way. They have to go to school in a building, and they have to sit there. Like I just find that is almost cruel, to be sitting there as passive learners, without any sounds outside or the sun shining on you, or like there's more to human beings than sitting in a chair and a desk, is what I'm saying. You tune out.
Well, that I think you have two main points here. One is that idea of just in time versus just in case. If I'm teaching you a whole bunch of just in case information, and I've got my little checklist here, and I'm checking off, did you learn that? Did you learn this? Did you learn that? And I need you to be disciplined. I need everybody to follow instructions. And that's very different than if I'm teaching you how to learn and how to go and pursue whatever knowledge it is that you're needing to pursue, because then it doesn't make any difference where you're at because it's coming from inside you. Right now, our education system, it's coming from outside. It's coming from the teacher.
Yeah.
It's coming
Yeah.
from the curriculum. It's not coming from you. And what we need to do is switch the purpose of education so that the purpose of education is helping you learn how to learn,
And
learning how
also,
to.
but it's not just about the learning too. It's that not everybody has the same blooming interest.
No,
Not everybody wants
exactly.
to be a mathematician. Not
Yeah,
everybody wants to be a chemist. Not everybody wants to write an essay.
yeah,
Like, I don't, and again, I'm bringing that up because it is about personal feelings. Like when you work with a child, like we had a child that just moved into our neighborhood. She is 7 now, but when she's so smart. They're from Bangladesh. And I don't know that much about Bangladesh. So we had them at our Christmas party. We invite everybody, doesn't matter what religion they are. We don't care about those things, our family. And one Canadian, one of our friends, who is also in our neighborhood, he says to me, he says, I've never met a kid so smart. I had a conversation with a 6-year-old. She was 6 last year. A conversation. And he found that blew his mind. I said, I grew up like that. I had conversations with adults all the time. This kid is, I think she's a genius, but she is I asked her mother, said, how did she learn? Because now she's going to school, and she said she had, last year she had such difficulty adjusting in the classroom, and because when she was growing up, the first few years they were outside, they were teaching, the grandmother was there, they went to school for only a few hours, and they had all this, other things. And this kid is so smart. I mean, and there's another one that's moved from Sri Lanka, and he's 3 years old. You can't believe how smart these kids are. Oh my God. And I'm thinking, I keep asking, like, how are you teaching these kids? They go for walks. They're teaching them all touch, feel, all this kind of uh using the senses. Anyway, I'm not sure what the answer is. I just know that
yeah.
it would be very difficult to be a teacher because you're trying to do your very best. I'm not saying all teachers to achieve what a country wants you to achieve, but what is a student getting? Like you can't just put everybody in a homogeneous
Yeah. But that,
thing. But
yeah. Yeah, but you said something very, very important. What's a teacher to do? Well, what's the problem gets back to the goal setting. What's the goal? Is the teacher see their goal as to deliver instruction and explanations or to measure the progress of students, or do they see their goal as helping students achieve certain skills and certain levels? Uh, because right now the teacher is looking and saying, well, wait a minute, I'm only responsible for teaching, for providing the instruction. I try to provide the instruction so that it fits the students, but I've got 30 students sitting in front of me and they've all got different interests and different needs. And
right.
and the lower the socioeconomic category of the majority of students in a classroom, the more diverse their needs are, the more
Yeah.
diverse their foundational skills are. So the teacher, as long as the teacher says, My job is I've got to figure out how I'm going to impart a level of knowledge across this diverse audience. And they come and say, but it's not possible. It's not possible. I've got a 4 year gap in knowledge skills of the people sitting in front of me. How am I going to be able to impart knowledge? But if my goal is to help them learn how to learn, that's something here that I'm helping them develop as individuals to their best skills. Now I can have them all go out and do the work, and I'm just observing, and I'll jump in to help those that are having difficulty in learning what they need to learn. Come back to that a little more in a minute. Nargis Nargis or Nargis? You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, Nargis. You can call me Nargis, Nargis. They both are okay.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Okay, Bill, I'm going to make a question from you and from everybody. Please, um, I request, don't be offended from my this very question, but it's just a question, okay? The question is that on every other day, we come across the news countries like Canada, America, and other European countries. They celebrate days like LGBT, and the Pakistani parents, Muslim parents, they are usually being curse for that thing, that they don't let their child to be a part of that very event. And as one say, I mean, like, maybe every child is not interested in every subject, so why it is being made so important for the children to do that thing? And even a few days back, I come across a clip, and it says, I mean, like a parent, a teacher in the Sweden, she has reported it to the authority that one of the child was told by their parents that there is no such thing like LGBT or something like that, even though the school they have taught them about the LGBTs and something like that. So the parents, they don't even have the choice if they forbid their children from such things. So my question is, how do these things make your education system great than the education system of any Muslim country? It's just a question.
Yeah, no. I think it's a very valid question. And that's one of the main reasons why we have homeschooling in the United States, is because some parents say, hey, I don't agree with everything that the public school system is teaching. I want to teach my children differently. Or they might say, I don't agree with the method that the public schools are using. And so they say, I'm going to homeschool the children. And Sid, I think, brought this up a little bit earlier, that one of the things that AI is doing, AI is really moving us very close to having the equivalent of homeschooling for everyone. Because when you get into a lot of the homeschooling, then you've got children of different ages in that family, let's say. So the schooling is very much based on the individual learner. And AI is giving us that capability. However, one of the things that we see is very interesting when we look at Khan Academy. Khan Academy, if you look at some of the older videos of Sal Khan explaining it, he was saying, well, right now, when we have this age-based cadre moving forward, or cohort, age-based cohort moving forward in lockstep, if you would, everybody doing the same thing at the same time, that we really need to get to mastery-based, which is learner-driven. As you master something, you can move on to the next item. But when we look at Khan Academy, which is now being used by some 140 million learners around the world, granted, not all K through 12, but it's being used by many, many teachers in schools. The interesting thing about it is, what do? They say, okay, tonight, everybody, I want you to do lesson 248 or whatnot in the math sequence or so. So they're really missing the main idea that learners should master all prerequisites before they move on. In other words, the teachers are stuck in this calendar-driven mentality that on Thursday I have to do this, and on Friday I have to do that. Ready or not, students, I don't care. And this is a big part of the problem. When we look at the bottom 10% of elementary schools where students begin school up to 2 years behind in mental maturity and verbal vocabulary. And then we go and keeping in mind at the high end in the wealthy suburban schools, they're beginning 1 to 2 years ahead of where they would normally be beginning in that first year. So then we come and have a state curriculum, and the state curriculum says, okay, on the first day of school, you do this, the second day of school, you do that. And we apply it equally to the child that's 2 years behind and the child that's 2 years ahead. And this is why, we get, and then I think I may have mentioned in one of the past meetings this hypothetical example that we said, what if we were to ask seventh grade math teachers, would you be willing to pledge to get 100% of your students to 100% grade level by the end of the year? If I ask that in my community where we've got 94, 96% of our high school graduates go on to four-year colleges, four-year universities, and we were to ask that, the teachers would say, well, what do you mean? That's what I do. I do that already. I get 100% of my students to 100% grade level. But if I go into Trenton, the capital of our state, or Camden, or some of the other cities, and I asked that same question of seventh grade math teachers, they'd go, are you crazy? Yeah, that teacher in Westfield can pledge that because 90+% of their students start the school year grade level ready. 90% of my students are 2, 3, or more years behind grade level at the beginning of the year. It's
But Bill,
unfair.
can I just say
Just let me
something?
finish this, and I'll
Sorry.
come. It's unfair that you even ask me to achieve the same level as teachers who begin with students at a totally different position. Yes, Joe.
And sorry, Sid. I just want to say that the system, we keep talking about content and testing and getting to the grade levels and stuff. But at the end of the day, the school system is about controlling how somebody behaves, that they're going to get a job at the end, and you better behave because this is how from 9 to 5 you're going to be in this job, or going to school and stuff. So get in your head, this is the way forward. It's not necessarily a creative way for people to think, because now they're in a box. I've got to go through this school, and then I'm going to get a job, somebody bossing me around. So like, we keep talking about the grades and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's about how we control how people behave. And we start at a very young age. And it's a society that wants to control how you do things, when you do them, how you do them. For heaven's sakes, they tell you when you eat, because you got to be hungry at 12. You can't be hungry at 10:30. Like these sorts of things. So it's a much bigger problem of functionalities of a student in a class. Anyway, that's my wrap for the day.
Yeah, there definitely is some of that because when we think of when the school systems really began in the United States, public school systems I'm talking about, that a lot of it was, hey, how are we preparing people to work in factories or to work or to be in the military and follow discipline. That was we had a handful of skills. You needed to know those skills and you needed to be very disciplined. And this is why in our schools, it's you don't talk unless spoken to, otherwise you keep quiet, and the teacher is the only one that is doing something. And which is something we maybe have to change. And that's why I come back to the idea of the goals. If you set the goals to say, we want to get all of our students to the point where they're all effective, independent learners, confident, effective, independent learners, then you've got to think outside the box because if you have the absenteeism due to socioeconomic category or things like this, you have to figure out how are you going to get every one of those students, including those students that only come to school sporadically, how are you going to get them all to that level? And that's going to force everybody to start saying, it's not going to work. You can't do it if you're having to go and broadcast the same set of knowledge at the same time to everybody, ready or not. Sid.
Yes, maybe it may add to the Jones point. The current school system, the way the setup is, what age you start and when do you go to the next class. There's a lot of similarities in the school system and the prison system. Uh, so unfortunately, uh, and the current schooling system, 1 through 12 and whatever it is probably it's not very old. It's maybe 200 years, 300 years old at the most. Before that, it was pretty much homeschooling, one-on-one. And that's what I'm constantly promoting. If you want to create the best student, you need to have homeschool. And why do we need to sit in a class for a whole year? Why can't we finish the work in 5 months, then take 1 month off, then another 5 months? So in 1 year, you go through two schools. Your high school should be finished by the age of 12. You should by the age of 16, you should be done with college if you desire. That is the plan I put together for the people who are listening to me. But there are not many people who want to listen to me.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
I was hoping that Zainab Ali would join us today. She's 10 years old, from Pakistan. She just turned 10 last month, I
Wow.
think. And she can actually hold classes to teach adults about artificial intelligence.
Wow.
This girl is amazing, amazing. I've talked to another young girl, similar age. She's in the Guinness Book of Worlds, youngest author in the world. I think she wrote her first book when she was around 10 years old. So yeah, we've got these people that have somehow learned not to follow the mold, and to take charge, if you would, of their own destinies. Um, there's a teacher in California who uses Khan Academy. He's a sixth grade math teacher. He's in a very, very disadvantaged school. His Every single one of his students failed fifth grade math, but they passed enough other subjects that they got promoted to sixth grade anyway. So here he's got a whole class of people, of kids, some of which were only at a second grade level in math. And his job is to get them all to master sixth grade math. And so he says, how do I do that? Well, the way he did that is he sent all his kids back to kindergarten. He says, all of you go back, use Khan Academy. You go back to the very first lessons. 1 + 1 = 2. And what is a number? And then you work your way forward, but you don't watch the videos and things like, you just take the tests. You take the proficiency test to see, have you mastered whatever that particular item is. If you mastered it, and most of the lessons in Khan Academy are only 10 to 15 minutes long. So if you are average, and if you're only taking the exam, it might only be 3 to 5 minutes because you've just got to answer 10 questions. And so if you know that, if you learned that when you were back there in kindergarten, you're going to just go through in 3 minutes and move on to the next item. You just move on, move on, move on, move on. But if you miss something, you've got these holes in your knowledge, you're going to maybe need a little longer. Maybe then you've got to ask for a hint and jogs your memory. Or maybe that's not enough. You actually do have to watch the tutorial to understand that particular point. And that one might take you 20 minutes to understand. But what you're doing is you're filling all the holes in your knowledge that you had along the way. But every student's doing it at their own pace. Because every student's got different holes in their knowledge. And so they're working their way through. So by the end of the sixth grade year,
But
the great majority of let me just okay. So the great majority of the students were at not only sixth grade, they were beyond sixth grade by the end of that one school year. Some students were not. They were maybe at the fourth or fifth grade level, but they had solid knowledge. Everything they had now had is solid. And so you can imagine if they said, okay, going into seventh grade, just continue that. By the end of seventh grade, probably 100% of those students would all be at seventh grade or better grade level if that was the case. But even the idea of 75, his class moved that his school was way below average for the state of California. And his class was way below average in the school, to being that his class was way, way, way above the state average for the entire state of California in 1 year. So he took all these students that were considered to be no chance students and turned them into top excelling students in the state in 1 year, just by having them each work at their own pace. He just watched from the sidelines, and if students got stuck more than reasonably on a particular problem, he might intervene, not to show them how to solve that kind of problem, but to find out if they were taking advantage of all the learning tools and learning methods along the way. And so this is an example of how we could really make the difference, how we could set the goals for 100%. The interesting thing about it is he could not even get the other teachers in his school to follow that this example, shining success, but nobody followed. Okay. And the majority, as I say, the majority of teachers who use Khan Academy, they just use it to say, instead of me having to record lectures, videos, I'll just have my students watch Khan Academy lecture videos. But that's not what it's about. It's about the mastery-based education. It's about building on a solid foundation. But we can get to that. And I want to take the next major section here. I want to talk, how can we get our schools to go and no longer accept goals that are just a little better than last year? How can we hire a new principal into a school that in the previous 10 years never got 10% of their students to grade level, and have them do that year after year for another 10 years? And we don't fire them, we don't change. What's that say about our education system? And I realize a number of you are coming from other countries where some of the issues are even getting the kids to school and getting them into school. But I want to break the focus onto two areas. One is getting kids involved with education, whether it's homeschooling or whether it's basically doing homeschooling in school by putting the focus on the learner rather than that. Because if that learner, keep in mind, if that learner is driving forward, they know how, they've learned that, for example, in that school in California, they've learned here, oh, okay, I mastered that item. Let me go to the next item. Okay, I mastered that item. Let me go to the next item. I don't quite understand that. Let me go watch a tutorial. Oh, okay, I understand it. Now I'll take the test and okay, mastered that, going on. They've now learned how to do that. The only thing here that maybe needs to be strengthened in that process is, how do I do research where nobody has set up for me in advance? Here's the sequence of things that you have to master to have mastered the entire subject. So you still have that, but that can be a subject unto its own, of learning how to research and discover things, and basically learning a little bit how to think creatively and critically. Okay, so any comments on this idea of the of setting the goal high enough and forcing the education community to say, no, you can't just go and say, it's not my fault, it's society's fault. I can't do anything until you fix society. To get the education community to instead say, it's obvious society's not going to fix the things, so therefore we've got to fix it in the education world. So how do we do that?
Well, in retail, those people would be fired, Bill.
You're right, but we don't do that. In
Yeah,
education, we
so
don't do that. So, but the thing about it is back I had I came out of business and I had built up a large multinational corporation. And then I got into education and I joined the faculty at Purdue University and I gave them 2 years. Actually, maybe a little bit. They tricked me into it by because I said the only way I would join the faculty is if they gave me free hand to do whatever I wanted. And then they called my bluff and gave me that. So, but I gave them 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, I realized university was too late to really make a difference in education. So I took 3 years. And in that 3 years, I traveled and I visited schools all around the United States, and in Missouri, and Texas, and Georgia, and the entire Northeast from Washington, D.C., and speaking to educators, speaking to students, mostly at the high school level, and trying to really understand what was going on and what was needed. And the interesting thing I found was two. One is almost every school was telling me about this fantastic program they were doing that was creating such great advances in education. And I kept saying, wow, with every school having a program that's having such improvement in education results, how come the national results are not moving? What's going on with this? The second thing I noticed was that it didn't make any difference how badly a school was performing. This one school that I visited in the Bronx, as I said, was one-third of students didn't come to school on any given day. Was one of the worst schools in the entire state of New York. And yet those teachers, you could see they really cared. Burned out, boy, terrible burnout. But they really cared and were dedicated to that. Yes, Ingrid. You're muted still, Ingrid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a retired teacher and I live in Memphis, Tennessee. So that was my second career after being a banker for 35 years. And what I learned is I was teaching English as a second language. So I was in the classrooms for my students from K through fifth grade. And so and did pull out. But what I learned is that the teachers, at least in our area, including myself, were required to have 3 lesson plans. And that is for the slow one, for the average one, and for the really smart ones, which is really hard because like I got up at 4 in the morning to write my lesson plans because I taught K through 5. So I had a lot of lesson plans. And the teachers, compared to private schools, because a lot of my grandkids go to private schools and they all have an assistant, the teachers had to just do it all by themselves and circles here and circles there, keeping them all. But it's like amazing what a teacher has to do and always has to be 150% prepared because of the observations that just pop in at any time. So it's really hard to be a teacher nowadays. But what I want to say, what helped, looking now what we are doing here, one of our mega churches, Bellevue Baptist Church, started a program called Arise to Read. And a lot of churches, and to know we have one on every corner here in Memphis, and a lot of businesses have their volunteers come once a week for 1 hour, teaching 30 minutes one student and 30 minutes and another student sight words. Those are all students in second grade who have to have these sight words in order to be able to read in third grade. And that has worked miracles. And I feel like if more volunteers from the community would engage in something like this, that is much better than our Rotarians, which I've seen too, going into elementary school and reading to kids. Teachers have a tight schedule. Being a teacher myself, I know that's an interruption. But if you pull these kids who really need to learn, these sight words, which are so important, that is much better. If we could just focus on the important things as a community, not just only the educators. They try hard. I mean, I've been there.
Yes, it's very interesting here. I'll come to you in a second. I met with a group of Rotarians in Trenton, the capital of New Jersey, which also is the lowest performing school district in the state of New Jersey. And they do a lot of programs. And the Quakers, they have a great program where they involve the whole family. They bring the family together and try to make sure the home environment is conducive to learning. The problem is for all those efforts, we have to look at the end result, and the end result is despite all the efforts being done by the Quakers with the families, with the Rotarians, in the Rotarians we're doing that. They were bringing the local businesses to volunteer time and things like this to get involved. It was not changing the education results. One of the things that's interesting about Mississippi is that 50% improvement in proficiency in reading was almost all among the top half of students. In other words, the students went from basic to proficient. That was where the big jump that resulted in a 50% increase. The result, or they did not have that kind of a result of improvement between below basic and basic. And this is something that we're seeing across the United States. We're able to take the average or the middle level students and we're able to help them improve and go to the next level. But we're actually getting worse and worse on the students that are towards the bottom, that we are not successful with that. And that leads a little bit to a mentality thing in the schools in the United States, maybe, that it is much easier to get additional funding for a gifted and talented program that will help the best students get better than it is to get a remedial funding for a remedial program to help the low performing students do better. But again, the only thing that counts at the end of the day is where we're going as a percent, and that's not. So it's not a question here, how do we succeed or do better with individual students, but it's what percentage of the students have we moved onto the next level, if you would. And so, especially for developing countries. In developing countries, we see that we have one of the highest rates of unemployment among university graduates. We've managed to go and increase the number of young people who are able to complete universities in these developing countries. But because we did not increase the bottom level, the number of people who are not getting the education, the GDP didn't go up. So we did not increase the demand for people with higher education. And this is why they can't find jobs and they end up looking and saying, oh, this market, there's no market for, there's no demand for me in my country. I now have to go and migrate to a country where there's more demand for my skills that I've acquired. So it's how do we raise the bottom levels, if you would? That's where we're going to make the biggest difference. But Aaliyah, you were, or wait, Ingrid, did you want to follow up on what you were?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I actually, what you just said, I can confirm that. I just came back from a mission trip in Mozambique, and one of my interpreters, she was just finished college as a nurse and couldn't find a job in Mozambique. She's from a rural area, couldn't find that either, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But just one more thing, what I said earlier is, I always thought it's reading that is going to help these kids to advance. And it starts way before. It's the ACE, the adverse childhood experiences, which are especially in the low performing kids, low income kids, is amazing. And so we are trying here to educate the teachers who well, now they should be aware of it. They have been trained, but they just still don't act in that way. They always think it's the child's fault. but it's more than that. It needs to start, like I mean, earlier when you said the country starts right from 6 months or so. I mean, that's what has to happen in our states that have these low scores, because a lot of the problems are the parents. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, that was Finland that implemented that approach. Um, but I think here, uh, as I say, the challenge here for your friend who's a nurse, does that mean there's more than enough healthcare people in Mozambique? Probably not. The problem is there's demand is not need. Demand and need are not the same. Demand is need plus the ability to pay. And in countries where you improved the top 10, 15%, but you did not improve the bottom 85, 90%, you have not increased demand. The need is there, but the ability to pay is not there in that bottom 85, 90%. And that's why it doesn't do any good to improve the top 10, 15%, other than for that individual, because that individual can say, okay, I'm going to move to another country. I'm going to move to where the demand is. But it doesn't contribute to improving the situation in the country that's involved. Sid, yes.
Yeah, we are uh, in this conference talking about a problem and trying to solve the global problem of improving the level of education and learning. Um, at the same time, we see Gaza for the last 2 years, people are being blown away and nobody is doing anything. So the problem is, uh, if we are so everything is controlled by politician in the history of the last 5,000 years, the politicians are trying to control people. So education is not the front runner, and because educated people are dangerous people. So, so that's why there is no focus on that. Plus, we are using the wrong tools. We are still in the past. The teachers are in the past. The students have moved on. I'm a part of a mosque over here, and the one of the head honchos over there is always complaining to parents that why they don't get their kids involved and interested in sitting there and listening. And I'm saying you are using the wrong language, you're using the wrong tools communicating with the kids. At the same time, I see 10 kids from 5 to 12, they're hovering around their cell phone, looking into something, whatever that was. I don't know, but that is the tool they're using. So we need to change, and we need to recognize the problem.
Yeah, the number one thing when I was spending those 3 years talking to educators, and I talked to the better part of 1,000 educators during that time, was uh, the recognition that the primary issue is motivation. In other words, why is somebody in school? Kids in the United States are in school because they have to be. They're told you must. Very few, if they go to school because they're happy, it's primarily because they want to see their friends, not because they're looking forward to the next lesson in math. And so the question is, how do we create an excitement? Well, that school that I talked about in the Bronx that was so bad, I had started off asking the students. They assembled all the juniors, sophomores and juniors, I think it was, in the auditorium, and I spoke to them, and I asked them what their aspirations were, what they wanted to be, and the aspirations were high. They all wanted to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever. High aspirations. The odds that any of the kids from that school could do any of those things, almost zero. But they had the aspirations. Then he asked, "What about your classmates? That all those that are not here in school that day?" And their reaction was, they're bums, they're criminals, um, that's why they're not here. So I said, oh, okay, well, who are they going to be committing their crimes against? And then all of a sudden it got really silent. Nobody said anything for a long time, and then finally somebody said, us. And I said, what are you going to do about it? And they got angry. They really, these kids, they got angry. Us, your generation's the one that screwed it all up. What are you doing about it? And so um, I then kept pushing this. What are you going to do about it? And nobody said, well, first they said we're going to throw them all in jail. And I said, oh, okay. What's that going to cost? And who's going to pay for that? And they realized they'd have to pay for it. So then this one kid, he could have been a plant. It fit so well. He says, I'm not worried. We have bars on the windows of my house. I'm safe. And I said, ah, okay, I get it. So you're going to put yourself in jail instead of putting them in jail. And so everybody sort of laughed at that, but all the answers kept coming back to either we're gonna isolate them or we're gonna isolate us. And then it got silent because there was no new answers. And then this young girl way in the back in a light voice says, why don't we figure out a way so not so many of our classmates fail? And I said, okay, how do we help? And then they really got excited. Oh, we could do that. And the main thing that came up was this idea, let's create a competition. Let's create a competition that would have compelling incentives they wouldn't be able to ignore, that would get everybody excited or the most excited to want to participate. And if we made the incentives be incentives, group incentives for the class, then the ones who are most interested in competing are going to find ways to pressure those who are not so much interested to help the team. And so they kept building on all of this. And then some of the kids would throw up ideas and said, yeah, but what about all these young girls? There was a very high rate of the students in the girls in the school who already had children. And so I said, "What are we going to do about all these kids? They can't participate because we have they've got to take care of their children." And then somebody else came up. Well, what about substance abuse? A lot of the kids are substance abusers, and what are we going to do about them? They're not going to be able to perform as well. And then somebody said, and the interesting thing was, every time somebody brought up an example like that, two or three kids would come up and say, "Hey, we could do this, we could do that." So they came up with a way to organize like an internal student daycare for the kids of student mothers, so that they would be able to study and improve. The basic goal they came up with is let's come up with a competition where we have these mind-blowing um, uh, uh, incentives for the graduating class that shows the greatest improvement over last year's graduating class, and using state exams as the model for that. And then the and to be incentive to get here. This was in 1980. When would it have been? 1988, I think it was. And they came up with the idea is let's offer the students of the graduating class collectively to the just one prize for the class to do whatever they want with of $1 million. $1 million for the graduating class to do whatever they wanted to do with, divide it up among themselves and go their own ways, throw a huge party and with part of it, do whatever you wanted. And so that was the answer. And the thing was, the discussion was an incentive is only an incentive if it incents. If you come up with an incentive that you think's an incentive, but it does not incent, it's not an incentive. So the incentive is determined by the people you're trying to incent. If it doesn't work, it wasn't an incentive. So the idea came up was what if $1 million is not enough to excite them? And we said, what if we threw in a brand new sports car for every single student graduating from school that year? And we started discussions with some of the car companies in Detroit, And we found there was actually interest in that if we could go and make this a national program to that they would provide free cars for every single student graduating from a high school that showed the greatest improvement. If for an entire year, all the kids in that high school were dreaming, drooling over the ideas, wow, I can get one of these cars. Wow. That would be marketing advantage to that car company. That was a great multiple of what they could get by paying for advertising. So then so we had the idea was the incentives would be piled on until it hit the point where they were irresistible in having the effect. And by making it here that the class that they're so compelling that the students that really wanted to go for it would really pressure the students that were not so interested to say, no, you gotta help the team. You're on the team. Everybody's on the team, whether you volunteered or not. But they came up with a way to help the students who were the mothers. They came up with a way to help students identify students that had substance abuse problems that until then they just said, not my problem, and ignored it. All of a sudden they were saying, hey, we're going to come up and identify these students and we're going to find a way to help them get off of drugs or whatever. Then somebody came up and said, but what about the gangs? The gangs control so much of what's going on here. And this one girl got up and said, hey, my cousin's the head of the biggest gang in the neighborhood there. I'll bet you we can get them to become our partner in winning the prize. So it didn't make any difference, whatever problems that some students threw up, that many other students jumped in and with solutions. And it was really interesting watching the teachers. The teachers were sitting on around the sides of the auditorium. I think some were grading papers and whatnot through most of the discussion. And as they saw their students actively coming up with ideas how to solve these problems, these major issues within the school, solving the problems to improve the achievement level of all the students in the school, and you could see one by one how they all stopped doing whatever they were doing and were just watching. And they couldn't believe that was their students. Their students were taking an active role and saying, how are we going to improve the situation here in our school? So this was, to me, this was mind-boggling, and it ended up in me going down and putting it on paper and presenting it to the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, which are the two main teachers unions in the United States. And they both loved the idea. They were ready to jump on it, but they wanted to see some pilots. And that resulted in me doing 3 pilot initiatives to demonstrate that we could use incentives to mobilize students. We did 3 incentives that crossed the entire United States, and we averaged 100,000 students in each of these incentives, each of these initiatives. And it demonstrated how easy. And that resulted in a related project that we had proposed being accepted as the major youth project for the 500th anniversary of Columbus's journey to the Western Hemisphere. And we were on track at that point for having 20 million students participating worldwide until the summer of 1992, which there were 3 movies that came out in just 6 weeks period that Columbus was the most evil person to have ever walked the face of the planet, and the entire Columbus exercise fizzled. But at any rate, so I'm getting off track. But the main idea was here that we have to get students to become the strivers and become the drivers of their own education. Finland achieves that by teaching them from when they're very tiny to say, "Oh, here's the learning lesson for 1 year olds. Okay, kids, go do it." So by the time kids reach first grade in Finland, they're independent learners. You just tell them, "Hey, you're expected to learn this," and they recognize it's their job to go and learn the materials. And So at any rate, the question is,
Well,
how can we take something like this and that these education institutions, the teachers' colleges in the United States, have been teaching this kind of approach for more than a decade now. This whole idea of don't be the sage on the stage, be the guide at the side. In other words, don't be the one that's saying it's my job to deliver the knowledge, but be the facilitator to help your students acquire the knowledge, to pursue the knowledge. Yes, Joan.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I was just going to say that, there is a great advantage for the teacher to almost be a facilitator, mentor, rather than so that's one thing. The other thing is this whole idea of incentives. When we're giving them material goods and cash, that's an outside incentive, right? Whereas shouldn't there be a role of trying to get that deep inside passion that someone has,
Yeah.
by helping them, because that lasts their whole lives, right? Again, I don't have an answer for this, but I think the individual teaching and the more close knit you are to someone who's teaching, and that personal attention helps. Smaller classes probably help. I don't have the answer for the school system. All I'm talking about is that we're having great disadvantage to individuals who may come from a poor family, and coming from a poor family is not a crime. Although people say, "Oh, poor people, if you don't do this, they're going to go in crimes." Well, there's lots of crimes committed by rich people too. But what a lot of poor kids have is an incentive to do better. They just need a way for someone to help them to see the way, to have those contacts, because they don't have them the same as rich kids do, and they take them for granted. But if many entrepreneurs came from poor families, so we have to stop saying poor and rich. In terms of education, we should be looking at passions and willingness to learn, and trying to provide the infrastructure that kids need. Poor kids don't want to be labeled poor and all this kind of stuff. They want to eat like everybody else, and they want someone, if they can't find it at home. And not all poor parents are bad parents. They're caught in a situation where they have to be providers. Sometimes a lot of women are single mothers. So there's a lot of social things. All I'm saying is that if we stop with the labeling in terms of rich and poor, and saying, what is it that the student needs? What is it? How can we help them if we fed them? If we did this? If we, what do you love to do, little Johnny or little Jane, or,
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah.
Um,
No, you're right. And there are examples in the Montessori schools, and we see things like this taking place. But when we go and look across the broad population, one of the things that we see is that a lot of children from poor families have been sort of lost their faith that their community or that the society is going to give them a chance, or that education is going to lead to anything of value to them. One of
mhm.
the things that first got me interested in education, was I saw a documentary in Germany that showed in the Ruhr Valley. It showed two girls going to the same class. They were maybe around 10, 12 years old or something like that. The one girl, her father was an architect and her mother was a doctor. And she lived in a big house, had a governess, a piano teacher, all of these aides there. And the parents were always sort of talking about the expectation of what that girl could become, that she could become anything she wanted to be. It showed the other girl. She was one of about six children. Her father was a miner, a coal miner, I think coal miner, but some kind of miner. Our mother was a stay-at-home mother. And when that girl, if she opened a book, a school book here at home, her mother would say, "Don't waste your time with that. Go and help me with your little brother." Right. So the issue was when they got into the school, the one girl was excelling, the other girl was like uh, not getting anywhere. And this is what I think leads to the the education results in Germany, and Germany for many years was a shining star in education in Europe, but the socioeconomic factor, they as they say here, the what is the biggest thing you can do, the most important thing you can do to be successful in life, and that is to pick the right parents. To make sure that you've got academic parents or parents in the higher socioeconomic categories, because that flavors your expectations.
Yeah, I
And
want to challenge that, but I'll let other people speak
yeah,
before.
yeah,
But I'll probably forget it by the time it comes around to me. But
okay.
anyway.
So because that impacts the expectations, so that the child doesn't have the expectations, and that's one of the things that Finland was really aiming to do, was by having these professionals running these preschools. And I'm talking about real professionals with degrees in child psychology and education and pedagogy and so forth. That these kids all, by the time they hit school, they had equal aspirations. They had equal confidence in their ability to be all of these different things. Okay, we got a long list here, so let me start going through. Sid.
Uh, One of the major problem with the kids learning is not having self-esteem.
Yes.
And so since I've been working and thinking about this area for a very long time, one of the things I have sort of developed that in order to move things forward, parents need to be trained, not the kids. So how to build the self-esteem into their children, and so it's a long process, but it still is very important. Uh, One of my religious imam 1200 years ago, 1300 years ago, has given us a formula that 777, the first 7 years of the child's life should be treated like a king. Give them the ultimate love and respect to build his self-esteem or her self-esteem. From 7 to 14, treat them like a slave. Make them do things. And then from 14 to 21, you treat them as an advisor, ask them for advices. So that is the total program of, because first 7 years, your subconscious mind is developing. And so that's a very critical period. And I can plug in that maybe vaccination is probably doing a lot of harm in those first 7 years, but that's a side story. Anyway,
There's an
And
interesting
what
thing.
happened after the seven? After 14?
I told you
King, slave, and
slave and then the advisor.
Yeah.
Ask them for advice for things to do, how to do it, and then
Yeah, and giving them a role, a
correct.
role to play. But there's an interesting example in that direction here in New York City. There's magnet schools. There's schools that have will put an extra effort in with the students. And it was interesting. There was a documentary a couple of years ago, and there was a protest going on in Brooklyn, and it's a district in the city. And a lot of parents were there protesting the existence of these magnet schools, because it's now giving differentiated opportunity to kids. And they said that's not fair. All kids should be treated the same. And about a week or two later was the registration, where parents could go and register their kids to attend these magnet schools that give their kids special advantage. And they interviewed several of the people that were in the protests, protesting against the magnet schools, were in the line to register their kids for the magnet schools. And so they said, yes, we're against the idea of giving unfair advantage to certain kids, but we're not going to let our children not have the best opportunity that they had. But what they found was the majority of the kids from the bottom socioeconomic categories, their parents never showed up. In other words, their parents would not take the time to register their kids to attend these magnet schools, which perpetuates
But they
the
probably couldn't get the time off work.
well, and I don't think it was so much that because most of these parents were on welfare and not working, and they just had no interest when they interviewed some of those parents. They just said, it doesn't make any difference anyway," and so they just were not willing to take the time to register their kids. There's another thing here. I met with the head of endocrinology, I think, at one of the teachers' hospitals associated with Rutgers University here in New Jersey. And she grew up in central India in a small village. And her father only made it through fourth grade, and her mother only made it through third grade. But her mother had been the guide. She had been taken out of school because her grandfather was a wandering judge. He would go from community to community to listen to the disagreements and judge the results. And he was blind. So his granddaughter got the job of guiding him from village to village. So when she grew up and then she married her husband, who had only made it through fourth grade, who had become a successful businessman in that local community, worked very, very hard. When they had their kids, and they had, I think, five kids, five or six, and the father was against his kids going to school and getting an education. And he said, because if our kids get an education, they're going to want to go to the city to get better jobs. And we're going to lose our children. So the idea is let's make sure our kids don't get an education, and then they'll stay home and they'll work and come to work in our factory. And so, but the mother, who really, from watching all her grandfather and learning all these cases, really had gotten an informal education, a very good education, and really valued education. She snuck the kids into school. Whenever her husband was at work, she snuck the kids into school. And he didn't find out until the oldest boy uh, reached the age where he would have to go to the next town to continue his education. And he forced his wife to take the kids out of school. And his wife actually left them because of that. And she took the kids and she left. And he realized she was serious, so he ended up begging her to come back and said, "Okay, the kids can go to school." The end of the story was all of their children became very successful. This one that I was talking to was a doctor. She had brothers that were lawyers and engineers, but every single one of them left the community. None of them lived anywhere near the family. And the mother ended up founding a school and so forth. But the so we can think here that in a lot of developing countries, parents are not necessarily interested in their children getting an education because they want to keep their children close to them. And I thought this was just a situation in developing countries until I found out that the commissioner of education of a state in the United States said one of the biggest problems was there's a movement of parents in her state that wants to stop advanced education for their children because it's a very poor state. There are very few jobs. And they said that they're seeing that all the children who get an education leave the state. And so they wanted to stop education, advanced education in their state. So this is not just something of a developing country. That totally blew my mind. I could not have imagined in the United States there would be a state where the parents don't want their kids to get an education because that will cause them to migrate out of away from the family. Yes, Nargis.
Yeah, thank you, Will. For quite some time, everybody is discussing about the professional or academic achievement of the student as compared to the socio-economic status, or say like their poverty level or something like that. So all these statements, they are never being approved or evident by the statistic. However, if we put it in the other way, that the children who are from the dysfunctional families, And definitely dysfunctionality, it usually comes from the poverty level of the parents. Okay, so we shouldn't direct relate the educational achievement of the children, or I mean, they're like their level of the brilliance with the poverty. Most of the time, the most brilliant student, they're usually from the very poor family. But when a child, no matter if he is from a very rich family, but the family is very dysfunctional, so such environment actually has a very long impact. Some psychological scars are there in the mind of the children, and their minds are all the time engaged in those sort of things. So, I mean, like, should we put it in that way instead of mean like direct associating the poverty with the brilliance of the student?
Uh, I think here the psychological scars, and Aaliyah had mentioned about, or had written in the chat about the children in that she had been familiar with, uh, that were coming to school, had hunger and violence and things like this that were impacting the kids there. She wrote, in UK, students come to school hungry, cold, and in emotional distress due to violent home lives. There's my grandchildren live in Munich, Germany, and there is a famous actress that started a program providing breakfast food in schools for children because they found so many tens of thousands of children in Munich come to school with no breakfast at home. But as the documentary was covering the story on that, um, they noticed that there were some children that were coming to school in the winter, barefoot in pajamas through the snow. And they said, "What on earth is this crazy? What's going on?" And they interviewed those kids, and they said, "Well, um, we can't turn the lights on in the morning to get dressed because our parents will beat us." And so they would just go to school the way they got up. And so it's and the interesting thing about it, it ended up that interview was taking place at the same school my grandchildren went to. And so, we do have this problem with the socioeconomic category that a lot of times, if the parents, let's say, never got an education themselves, and so their expectations and their lifestyle and everything is sort of aimed at where they're at in life. And so it was mentioned before about money. It's not necessarily about money because you can have parents who are academics who got the education and everything, or maybe teachers or whatever, and they don't make a lot of money. And even though they may be poorer than average, their children grow up with a different expectation because of the mindset of the parents. But Finland has demonstrated that you can take those kids from those lowest socioeconomic backgrounds, and if you put them in the day in an environment and treat them equal to the kids from the most privileged environment during the day, that by the time they hit school, they overcome most of that scarring type is overcome. Now they also have a lot of social workers that so if they notice in the school that apparently the children are not being treated appropriately at home, they'll intervene there as well. But at least the confidence level in those students, because as Sid pointed out, self-esteem is one of the biggest factors on children's willingness or ability to apply themselves to learn. So the thing that we saw here with talking to educators was that students, even students from a very poor background who were doing really poor in school, that teacher in California that I mentioned, his students that came in to his sixth grade with only being at a second grade level, when they left and they were now at a fifth or sixth grade level, their confidence went through the roof. They realized that their belief that they had held that they couldn't learn was wrong, and they now had gained confidence in their ability to learn. And so we see we can turn this around, and the experts that publish all the studies and try to go and say, hey, this is what we need to change in the schools. And I had hoped here, I think I'm going to run out of time, but I have from a discussion with ChatGPT where just saying here, okay, what's the problems in the schools? What do we have to do? They came out with the exact same things that the teachers' colleges and others have come out that has to change. The problem is that we're basically saying teachers have to stop teaching because teaching is puts the student in the passive role and becomes a crutch because the teacher intervenes anytime the student is having difficulty and instead of the student learning how do I overcome the difficulty. So at any rate, but I think so what you were saying there about the socioeconomic, what we've seen does not work is the attempt to say we have to go out into the community and fix the community. Yes, you can get anecdotal stories where somebody has done that and gone out and gotten the parents together and totally changed the community, but we don't see that on any widespread scale anywhere. And so we have to look and say in the schools, if we did what the teacher in California, that teacher in California did, and had the students go and move at their own pace, fix all the holes in their knowledge, gain the confidence in this, that they're going forward faster. And there's a professor from Stanford University, Carol Dweck. She did an experiment in New York State with, I think it was an elementary school in the Bronx that was rated as one of the worst schools in the entire state of New York. And in 1 year, she got that school to be among the top schools in the entire state, disproving the idea that it has something to do with, oh, these kids have lower IQs or they're just not able to learn. She proved that that is totally false. If you can get the children to become strivers and to go for it automatically improves their confidence levels in their abilities. And the number one killer of education drive is lack of confidence. If I don't believe I can do it, why should I try? But if I believe here, whoa, wow, I can really do this, you're willing to invest and try. And so that's what she proved. And they call that the growth mindset. And you can look that up. She's written several books on it. Carol Dweck. Yes, Malik. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Bilgram.
Yeah. Yes.
Sister Alia Arif is there. I want to say something with her in Urdu, and she will translate for me, or I can say
maybe
something for me.
Nargis,
Alia Arif,
Nargis can translate. Go ahead, Malik.
Okay. Sir Pilgrim, I would like to have a recording of this program. How could I get it? Because I do not understand the English, and I would like to translate it by no.
Yes.
That I could get it, understand it fully, get it beneficial for me.
Yeah.
What is the way? What should I do?
I will post it, and in fact, I'm going to try the. I saw that I think it was 11 Labs has now the ability that you can take a YouTube and it will translate it into another language. So I'll give that a shot.
Will it be available on YouTube?
Yes, I will upload it here within the next 2 days to YouTube.
What's the name of your channel, YouTube channel? What's the name of it?
Dare to be Great.
Name of the channel is Dare to be Great.
Dare to be Great. Yes.
Thank you, really. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Yes, Paula.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I've been listening about all the things you guys have been talking about, educational system, and Finland has been like in my watch list because, as you know, right now I'm in Costa Rica and I'm trying to bring up the educational system a little bit, the standards. And Finland actually has been ranking Singapore had been ranking very well, but you know the issues there is about discipline, and I don't like that approach. I mean, because somebody can learn something without being punished or feel obligated to do something. I like the Finland approach because one thing is they they treat the teachers with respect.
Yeah.
They pay higher salaries, and the parents do not challenge the teachers because they treat them as a doctor or as an engineer, which means they have the knowledge while they're teaching. They get a lot of professional development, which is what is lacking in the bad schools. And to use the latest um, pedagogies for teaching, because education has been evolving. To begin with, that's one thing. Secondly, they actually are very innovative about trying new things. How they now at the like the preschool level, they're introducing something like the role playing. They're trying to raise or teach the student, the boy and the girl, to have to exchange the roles. Like a typical role for a boy or a man compared to a typical role for a woman or a girl. And so that's kind of like forward thinking. I like it a lot, and I think it's going to be very, very beneficial for them. And it is actually the number of hours is the day spent in school is not as much as many as the one in the US or even in private school, and not sending like projects home or homeworks and things like that. That is actually good because people get tired. The students get real tired if they have a lot of stuff is happening at school and they have to go home and do a lot of the other things. So all that affects. So that's for starters. So Finland, yeah, I'm all for their methodology and I'm kind of following them up. And compared to the US, what you were saying, like my daughter went to public school, but was ranked the number one public school in the whole United States. So it's in Naperville, Illinois, and it's a very affluent community. Of course, all the students of the were there was the son and daughters of scientists because it was a nearby uh, Department of Energy National Laboratory, and so my daughter went there. And one of the things about the parents, they're very competitive, like you were saying, like if there is a magnet program, they want their kids to go in and all the stuff. But even though, okay, we're talking about highly educated parents. When my daughter was in school, I mean, first she participated in all the soccer games and all the little things, and she participated in almost all the sports. But I remember when she was in kindergarten, and the parents were pushing like everybody has to get a trophy. And when they were get to the finals, my daughter's team lost. And I told her, you got that trophy, but it's worthless because this other team was much better than you, than your team. So don't bring or don't think that you're always going to get a trophy because you have to demonstrate what you're capable of achieving by yourself. And I think that actually made a big impact on her because when she entered elementary school, there was a lot of competition internally with the students. And I remember like to be selected for the gifted program, to be selected for the language art program, the math program. And there were some parents very, very angry because, like example, when my daughter was selected for the gifted program, actually she got selected before math. I'm very strong in math. My husband is very strong in language. So she was admitted to the language art program, which is, I mean, she was doing a lot of stuff like at the third grade level, basically at the level of college. And some parents were very angry because they're saying, why is it that my kid is not selected for that? And I'm thinking, this is the same thing as kindergarten. I mean, when you admit students that are put the same, I mean, to my daughter, it was natural. I didn't have to do anything for her. She just did it. I said, you basically are going to water down a good program because by letting in students that are not as committed or can do what she's capable of doing. And so she had to wait a little bit, several years until she got accepted into the math program, which is very competitive, very selective, but she was. And I think it's parents really wants to have their kids into all these programs, but sometimes they should be aware that their kids do not make the cut. I mean, and you lose or you water down some of the programs because they just want to do it. Because if the kid really, really, really is capable of being in that program without ruining the opportunities for other ones, they will make it one day. Like my daughter, she took several years until when she was in middle school, she was accepted into the math program, and it was because about a test and all the little things in there. But she was since third grade, she was in the language art program. So anyway, she just did it by herself, and now she's getting her PhD next year in Europe because she decided to move from the States to Europe to do the PhD. So basically, so we as parents, what we can do is we can just tell them what the reality of the world is. We should not be buying them things like your entrance to this place, your entrance to this place. Just tell them how the world. Like I told her in kindergarten, this trophy is worthless. And she used to have a lot of little trophies. I said, this is not. You did not win it. This other team was much better than you. I mean, later on when she got all the other things. I mean,
I think here what are some of the things, there's some positives and some negatives in this. One of the things is, yes, it's important to be aware that you have a realistic view, that we don't come and inflate grades just so we don't have students feeling bad. But the better than going and saying, "Oh no, you got a B," even though you really only got a C, is to help that child figure out how they can get a B. How do they strive to go further? But and that's why the individual education is playing such a major role. And we have to look at the one of the fastest growing school networks in the country right now is the Alpha School. That's where they've replaced all the human teachers with the AI instruction, and they reduced the school day down to 2 hours a day for academics, which leaves a lot of time for more social development and the like, and pursuing your individual passions. So I think that's the future. But how do we get to that? Because teachers right now, they maybe when they come out of teachers college, they've learned don't be the sage on the stage, be the guide at the side, and they want to do that when they get to school. And then they get there, and the existing teachers say, "Hey, wait a minute, whoa, 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 this is the way we do things here." And you got to follow the curriculum. You got to go and make your lesson plans, and you got to go and develop the curriculum, and all these different things that you've got to do. And we don't have the goal here of worrying about whether your students become independent learners or not. We only care, did they pass the algebra test? Did they pass the chemistry test, and so forth? The question is, how do we bring about these changes? And we have ideas on that. One of the thoughts is we're looking at the idea of doing a competition. Well, first of all, we're looking at the idea of taking 10 schools, elementary schools, primary schools, that have never achieved 10% of their students at grade level by fourth grade, and demonstrating that we can go and boost that school so that 70% of their students are at grade level within 1 year. Given that there's only one state in the country that has even 40% of their students at grade level in fourth grade. I mean, that's the average. So as a state level, obviously within the state, you have schools like you're in where your kids are, where you went to school, that are exceptional, or where I live, the wealthy communities. But across the state, the average. So we're taking 10 schools that are in the bottom 10% of the state, which are typically almost 100% lower socioeconomic category, and demonstrating in 1 year we can take them to 70%. And then issuing the challenge to say to any other school, why is it that you're not doing the same? Why is it that you can no longer use as an excuse the fact that your children, that your students are coming from a socioeconomic background that makes that not possible? We take the method used by the teacher in California and apply that. Now, uh, what we're looking at here is if we take math, for example, which a lot of kids at fourth grade think is the toughest subject. If we take math and demonstrate here to these kids that they can go from nothing to being masters, to being straight A in math in a year, their confidence level goes through the roof. So the issue is how do we get them to be strivers? Because the only way you can do that is by students working independently, by them each proceeding at their own pace, filling in all the gaps and holes in their knowledge up through the end of fourth grade. That's about 450 learning units or learning concepts that you have between kindergarten and the end of fourth grade. If they have mastered every one of those, they will have mastered the entire curriculum for fourth grade. And we've seen here we've done some model estimation of what percentage of those learning units are going to be able to be done with the minimum amount of time, 3 to 5 minutes. How many of those are going to be average time of 10 to 15 minutes? How many of those might be needing 30 minutes or more? And so that we can see that almost all, the majority, maybe 80% or more of those students should be able to complete the entire K through 4 curriculum within one school year. And with that boost of confidence that would bring about. So the plan that's the plan, but they have to become strivers. So we're looking at using incentives, mostly recognition type incentives, and things like this, where so that the entire school, the teachers, the students, everybody is striving to hit that mark to be 100% grade level at grade level by the end of fourth grade. Now, the question is, how do we get to there? Because so many programs fail. The first thing we realize is that if you come from as outsiders, if you come from an education institution or something other than the teachers, and you come and say, hey, you guys have been failing, and we know how to fix your failures. We can tell you how to do your job right. You're not likely to be accepted. So we are looking here at methods to see how do we get schools. We want to get students to become the strivers. How do we get entire schools to strive to be in a program to demonstrate that they can achieve that kind of success in that short amount of time? And our concept has two main ideas on that. One is we want to reach out to fourth grade teachers. And we want to say, okay, everybody keeps saying you're not doing the job. The general wisdom, or if you would, is schools that are doing poor at fourth grade is because they have lower quality teachers. My experience is that is not the case at all. You cannot use the same teaching methods in that succeed in wealthy communities. You can't use those in communities where the students don't have the prerequisite knowledge to succeed at that level. So the idea here is to get those fourth grade volunteer teachers from the fourth grade working with the teachers unions and to get volunteers who will work to find a solution of how they can achieve getting all these students to become independent learners and becoming star academics in the subject matters that are being tested at fourth grade, which are primarily math and reading. So the idea here is to get a number of fourth grade teachers, and by saying you cannot involve any change that's outside of the school, outside of your control. You can only include solutions that are things you can do inside of your school. And B, you cannot present a solution that does not have the potential to reach the 100% goal. It has to at least have the potential to reach that 100% goal. and have them say you got to keep, you got to keep putting up the ideas. That one, you put up the idea, you say, okay, can that really achieve the goal we're talking about for 100% of the students? Those students that only come to school twice a week, 3 times a week, is it going to work for them? You got to be able to come up with solutions that satisfy, that handle all these scenarios. The second thing is that we then create a competition. We get a couple of sponsors and we create a competition. We have in New Jersey, for example, 130 some odd schools, primary schools, that are in that bottom 10%. And that we say, okay, we're taking 10 schools. You have to compete for the right to be one of those 10 schools. If you are in that one of those 10 schools, you get all kinds of great publicity for your school. You get some tools, materials, equipment, and things like this that might be what your students will need to be able to be successful. So you're getting some hand holding and things like this, and you get a lot of motivational here. We get some star basketball players, football players, and whatnot that are coming and cheering the students on and getting them pumped, so that they're really applying themselves in some competitive efforts that are getting them to say, hey, we got to do better tomorrow than we did yesterday. And so that we use psychological impact, we provide the tools, and move on. So the goal is to be able to demonstrate that schools that for decades have failed can become among the most successful schools in a very, very short time. And then the other two factors is how we get the schools to accept it. And if it's a program that's coming from teachers, their own community, and saying this will work, that they're more likely to accept it. And if there's a lot of rewards related to it, they're likely to accept it. At least those that are ambitious are likely to join and accept. And then the program of just keeping it going by keeping the publicity up, having stories being written about each of these schools almost every week in the newspapers. Just like, you look at every newspaper's got 2 or 3 pages devoted to high school sports. We get a page devoted to what's going on with the schools and their communities that are participating in this unique experiment there. So that's an idea that we have for what we call close the gap. Now, the question is, can we use the same approach in, let's say, places like Costa Rica? I think we might have to make some tweaks, but I think we can do it. One of the things we're looking to do here, and unfortunately, Jerica is not with us today, but she's working to pull together a group to do a project like this in the southeastern Michigan, northwestern Ohio, southwestern Ontario area. And I'm hoping here with Ingrid who was on the call earlier, that we can do something like this in northern Mississippi, western Tennessee. And then we've got the New Jersey, New York area that we will look to do the same. And Kurt's not with us, but hopefully we could do the same thing in Southern California, so that we can, if we can create not only the community, the competition within the 10 schools within each of those networks or each of those geographic areas, but that we can create the geographic areas competing with each other across the board to demonstrate, hey, we can do it. So anyway, that was the thought.
Yeah, Bill, at least in Costa Rica, I was able to get the okay from a principal, because here you have to have a principal from the elementary school to be on
Yeah.
board, because it's not the ministry or anything like
Yeah.
that, because somebody that is willing to give the students an opportunity. Because if somebody from outside, in this case, my case, the foundation will bring the material. And this year, I have been getting some professional development about what things I could use with a public school in Costa Rica that to bring elevate what it is math and with manipulatives and language arts and things like that, using science to a different level. So I actually have been working all this year and getting this, and hopefully next year I'll be starting. It will be a pilot plan. It will be my goal. That would be unbelievable if I can turn this school around, because I think it's the methodology that they use for teaching, because the parents do not have to buy anything. I will bring them the supplies, like materials, the Legos, and all that kind of stuff, the computers, their own iPads, and have them participate in for that. And so it would be, and I would like to actually know more about what you're doing in New Jersey, because I would like to help you over there too. Because
Great.
eventually I have to return to the U.S. at one point.
Yeah, no, and I think here, again, it's pulling together these different pieces. So we have psychological aspects at the student level for the students. We got psychological aspects at the teacher and school administration level, and then we've got at the school district level we have the psychological aspects. So and we got to time all of these to pull them together so that we can get consensus to be able to move forward on some things that are not shooting at saying, oh, well, let's improve by 10% or whatnot. That we can do that with tutoring programs where we just say, hey, come in, let's find the students that need tutoring that are willing to do it. But it's sort of like Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results is the definition of insanity. And we can see these methods. Are they going to work for the student that has high absenteeism? Are they going to work for the student that does not have a home environment suitable or conducive to learning? Is it going to work for students that begin school 2 years behind in verbal vocabulary, and maybe they don't have speak English at home? Or whatever the language is of the local learning. So we need to have solutions that have a chance to work in all these different situations, and not just say, sorry, I can't do it until you fix those external situations. That's the thing that we know does not work in most countries. China, they're able to be successful with that because they just dictate that's the way it's going to be. But for the most of us, that is not the situation. Yes, Joan.
Yeah, so you're moving into sort of the action side of this.
Mhm.
So congratulations. So you have 10 pilot schools, is that what you're
We
saying?
don't have them. We
Are
don't
you
have them yet. We're working on how do we
right,
get there. Our first goal here,
right.
we've developed a survey, two surveys, for trying to get fourth grade teachers to participate in designing the solution. And in the discussion of the solution here in the survey we did, which will be the survey for teachers who register that they would like to participate, we're asking them, for example, to say, what are the primary things that are limiting your ability to get 100% of students to grade level? So they can say, oh, absenteeism is a major problem, and this is another major problem. And then we go and ask and say, okay, when you coming up with solutions, you ask yourself, are these solutions going to mitigate or overcome those particular problems that you've identified?
Okay, so the reason I asked was I'm not a teacher in terms of being in a teacher education system. But I thought you were going to be starting to design your campaign material and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to say that I'd like to be on that team kind of
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
So,
We know that.
because I know
Thank
you
you.
had asked me to be involved, and I was thinking, what can I contribute? I don't like to do something if I can't contribute something.
Yeah.
So if there's a plan, this next 4 months we're going to do to find out fact finding so
Yeah.
that we can build
Yeah.
our campaign on actuality. I'm
I
happy
would
to
be
help with
happy to
that.
share with you. We have a folder that has a lot of the materials, these surveys, these online surveys that we designed to try to identify, get teachers to recognize the problems, the real causes. Not we know poverty is the major cause. We get a perfect X on the correlation between poverty and low achievement. It's a perfect graph. But also looking here at how do we mobilize the media? Because
Yeah.
a major factor for getting schools to participate is putting them in the spotlight by going and saying, hey, we've got a spotlight here that will cover you. How do we go and get celebrities to go and support the idea of motivating the students? Because we have to go beyond just the teacher saying, yes, you can do it. But if we can get here, give the students bragging rights, if you would, to
So what
things
is
like this.
your actual implementation plan? Do you have one, or you've just written documents on the idea?
Yeah, no, we've written documents, including sort of a step by step of the things that we need to do on it. This was being done just at the time when COVID came along. It was
Yeah.
one of the projects that we have. It's listed in our document. And I don't know if you've seen the document that has our 12
No.
contemplated projects that we were seeking to do. This one is called
No,
Closing
I don't have
Education.
anything like that.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't have anything like that from you.
So I'll send you that. It's we have two projects that are in the category of close the education gap. Actually, three now with the preschool level one to close the verbal vocabulary gaps that happen before you ever get to kindergarten. That's something that's going to be needed worldwide because if we look at
Mhm.
almost everywhere in the world, a very, very large percent of children grow up in a household that speaks a different language than whatever the local education language is. And
So
those
which step or which focus are you going to start with?
would start with here. We're putting together, we want to pull together a group of people who will review because, as I said, some of this stuff material is 5, 6 years old. So we want to pull together first a team of people that say, I want to make a difference, and to review the plans that we had developed at those times and say, do they need updating or are they good the way they are? The plans for reaching out to the media, reaching out, and when I talk about media, most of the mainstream media has a education editor or a group of journalists that cover education issues. And so we see, at least here in the United States, in New York City, most of the major TV networks actually have initiatives to work with the
Mhm.
schools to
Mhm.
bring about a difference, to demonstrate something. And so we want to bring
Okay,
those people,
so
and
yeah.
then the education community, the teachers' colleges, we want to bring them in as far as designing the solutions. We know from a lot of research that we've done, we know what the likely solution is, and we've got examples of why it works. But it's not enough for us to have it. We need the education community to come to those conclusions on their own, so we can
So
guide
could we
them.
start? Yeah, so where do you want to start? Like I can't come in and tell you what to do,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what I'm saying is that when you contact people, this is my experience, and I've done about hundreds of events. People don't come on board if something is not successful. That's why pilot projects are very
Right.
important.
Yes. Or has
We've
the
had these
potential for
conversations
success.
before.
They have to have the
Sorry?
potential for success.
Yeah. And so and also, what is the target market and what's in it for them?
Yes.
So these are I'm saying it from a community point of view, not an education point of view, because I understand the education has its own system. So I'm not speaking on behalf
It's
of
pretty
that.
similar. A lot of politics.
Yeah, so but community, like you have to, when you do community events, you really have to, why would they come to this event? Why would they be part of this
Yeah.
campaign?
The first
And
thing
same
we're
as
looking to
politics.
do, Joan, is we're trying to put a flyer together
Yeah,
to invite people from these particular areas where we know they have Rotary District initiatives on education they want to do,
right.
and to
Perfect.
invite them to come to a first brainstorming a session on the concept in general. Then from
Okay.
that to have a committee that will work up the step-by-step plan. The goal is to kick something like this off for the 26-27 school year.
26, 27. Okay,
Yeah, because
so
because because you have to give it a year. If we're saying here we think we can raise schools that have never achieved 10% of students at grade level to having 70%, you have to give them the full school year to be able to do that. And it has
okay,
to be
so
already planned and laid out well
right.
before the beginning of that school year.
Exactly. I was just about to say, okay, so if the 26, you're saying the fall of 26 then
Right.
is when it would start. So we
No,
have a year.
that's when the project in the schools would start. We
That's what I
need
mean.
to,
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
We're
Yeah,
waiting for the elections here. One of the problems we got, there's a lot of local elections that are taking place here, and a couple of state level elections taking place here next month. And right now, we don't know on the commissioners of education and so forth. We don't know for sure who's going to be playing what role. New York City, New Jersey, these are areas like that that are going to have problems. So we need to wait for these elections to be done so we know who the contact people would be. But then we've got to start working here, hopefully with the unions in the beginning of the next year in January to try to recruit the teachers who would participate in the solution finding, if you would. Um,
yeah. So I'm confused on why you'd have to wait for the election. A planning document, you just put those
no.
names
Planning
in
document,
later.
we can proceed with that. No, I
Yeah,
meant we have to wait for the election before we can move forward in trying
the
to recruit.
contact.
We need to be able to, we want to try to recruit the commissioners of education of the states involved, and we
Right,
want to get the unions. We don't want to leave people out because people, if you leave them out, they start to take pot shots at you here.
yeah,
To whatever you come up with doesn't make any difference what it is, but if they weren't involved, they're going to react negatively.
right. Yeah, it's an ego. So when do you anticipate your planning will start? Because that's
I
almost a less
we
than a
wanted to,
year.
yeah,
Because
we wanted to
I'm
do it
just saying
last
that
week.
you have to have your planning done, then you have to market it, and then you
Yes.
have to have the acceptability.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And we would have done it last week. Jarek and I talked about a week, 2 weeks ago, putting together a flyer to try to appeal to go out to the Rotary districts to recruit people that are passionate to want to shoot for that 100% result rather than an incremental improvement.
okay,
But
so
then I
we
had that
the
surgery
group.
come up, and unfortunately, I
You have
lost a
to live
couple of weeks
life,
ago.
right? Yeah.
What's that?
So I don't want to be like this, the CFA plan, sorry to bring it
Yeah,
up, but we agree on a purpose and then it just went to pot. So, if you don't have a purpose and build around that, there is
yeah,
no project. I'm
yeah.
sorry to say,
No. First
you
thing I need
know.
to do is I'll send you here the folder. I need to check with Jerica. She was going to review the folder and see that we need to put an overview document because there's about 10 documents in there so people understand what to read and what sequence to understand what the overall flow is. So
Okay.
I'll check on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't necessarily have to be part of the planning unless you want to invite me to that, but I'd like to
Oh,
be
I'd
who
love to have
understands
you. The
it.
more the more the merrier.
Well, I'm more like, once you make the decision, I want to get you while you've worked with me
Well,
for
that's the
CFA,
reason
so you
why you
know.
would be a great value.
So,
I'm more the
anyway.
person out there with the machete that's chopping a path through the underbrush. I always had
I work well with those people, by the way. I often said my husband is a maverick. If you want something done, you tell him and he goes in and he blazes never mind what gets there. And I
well,
come in and I do all the maintenance,
I always
the
had the
slow work.
advantage of a great COO, so that he would build the road behind me because
Yeah. No,
otherwise it
I
just
work well
disappears.
with trail, like the machete people very well,
Yeah,
because I
good.
have 45 years of history with my husband.
Okay, good. So we'll work then on getting together the documents that we've got that really go into depth. It's how do we recruit the schools? How do we recruit the teachers? How do we motivate everybody involved? All these things. There's papers that cover each of these things that have to be done along the way. So,
Okay. Like I said, I'm happy to wait until you're done with that, or I can be part of it.
no, I'm
I
I'm
don't have a
hoping
lot
to
of
be able to
time. We
do
do
that
still
this
have to
week.
do the safer plan, by the way. So,
I
I would like to help, but I don't know how
No,
from
the
here.
thing about it is I'll get that the information on the details on the project. I'll send that out to all the people that have expressed interest in education that we've got here, and we'll see. We'll see. You'll be able to see here what's there, and you'll be able to think, okay, I can contribute something here, contribute something there. As I said, some of the materials are 5 and 6 years old. They may need updating. The There's so many opportunities available to us now.
Mm,
We used schooldigger.com for information on where schools stand or what schools have particular
mm,
problems. And there's a couple of services like that. I don't know if there's an equivalent service on Canada because, as I said, we want to include the Rotary District that includes Windsor. That's part of a three-district group that wants to come up with an education project in that part of Michigan, Ohio, Ontario, and so we can move forward because it's time. COVID's no excuse anymore, and we're not making a success. I wasn't as aware of the two things until this foundation here in New Jersey that I'm hoping will join us. It's called Wake Up Call NJ .org or .com, and they have spent millions in awareness campaign at the beginning of this
mm,
year, highlighting how bad the education results are in New Jersey. And
mm,
on the United States, it blows my mind that for the first time ever, the United States as a country has reached the point where 40% of all fourth graders nationwide do not have even basic reading skills.
mm,
And basic does not guarantee enough to be able to do grade level math or any other
mm,
subject. So, and they're below basic, 40%
mm,
below basic. So, the need is there. Part of the problem is in the wealthy communities, the political will is not there.
mm,
You got a combination. You've got some parents that said, "Hey, I don't want those kids from those lower
mm.
socioeconomic categories getting an education because I don't want my children to have to compete with them later." Right? So, it's the Nancy Kerrigan thing where that ice skater, Olympic ice skater, her boyfriend smashed the knee of her competition to avoid having to compete against her. That's
No, Nancy was the one that got the knee done to
right,
her. It
right. She
was
did. It was, yeah,
the other way around. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, it doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Well, I just
so
thought I'd bring it up and ask. So
great.
anyway, I have to run. And see,
Yeah,
this is
I
my
think
favorite.
here
My
we've hit
favorite
our
husband is my favorite husband is here, and he's brought me. You ready for this? Toasted bagel with smoked salmon and cream cheese, a
oh.
banana, and a chocolate chip cookie. How's that? Oatmeal
Oh,
cookie.
That sounds really good. I have to see here. I'm amazed. Oh, I guess I got still 8 minutes before somebody starts pounding on the door here, reminding me that
Yeah.
time's up. So
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody. Hopefully, this has been an interesting session. I will work to get it posted up on the channel. And I think what I'm going to do is on the next invite, I'm going to send out the I'll send out the link to our channel of videos because we've got about 50 or 60 videos going back a year and a half. There, the biggest problem is that I haven't taken the time to put in the description of each of the videos. So the videos only say, oh, this was the meeting of this date. Well, I don't know how many 3-hour videos you're willing to watch.
No,
But
I
we're,
do summaries now for my meetings
yeah,
because people don't watch the videos for one thing.
absolutely.
But the summaries they read.
What
But
tool are you using for
um,
the summaries?
when we have the meetings, I have the AI companion,
Yeah.
and it summarizes. It says summary, but it actually captures in text, and then I look at it and correct anything that's misspelled or misleading that they have, and I send it out for this is for IEEE
Yeah.
meetings, and
Y-
I find that that's very helpful to people because they get it right away.
Mhm,
Rather than the videos. So we
mhm.
stopped the recordings because no one was listening to them, but they read the summaries.
Yes.
I'm
So
looking
Oh,
here.
you could use Bill. You could use another one that is called Otter. It's
Otter.
yeah,
Yes,
OTTER.
yes,
yeah, you
yes.
can
It's
use it as well.
perfect. I mean, it's
Yeah,
perfect because I can get a summary of that right away
yeah,
because
Yeah.
I take a lot of professional development lessons
yes, they do.
pro, uh, uh,
Yeah, you can also
because
go
I want
here.
to be.
You can also go to Gemini,
Yeah.
and you just give it the link to the YouTube video, and it will summarize all the
Uh,
key
Oh,
elements.
really? Oh,
For
okay.
me, at the bottom of your screen, it says AI companion, and I just put
Yes,
that on,
actually,
and it summarizes it.
it's on the
Yeah,
side of my screen here. I
yeah,
think you
and
can see.
I swear I've been using it for about a year now, and
Mm.
I because I'm the chair and I just send it out right away. Like
Mm.
within when they send it to me, I look at it and I send it, and everybody gets it, and then I attach it to any of my agendas. So it's very, very easy in terms of information. So
That's a
Paula,
good idea.
yeah, Paula, quickly, you sent me an email. We should connect. I'd like to talk to you about the Victory Garden. As you know,
Yeah, I like to know what you're doing and
yeah,
what can we do together because I
yes.
work in a lot of different little things in there,
Yeah. Okay.
and you know,
I'll
and
send you an email
eventually,
with a Zoom link. If you send me some times when you're available, I'll send it to you. Sorry, Bill.
sure.
No, no
Mhm.
problem. Okay,
No.
well then, thank you, thank you for the
Okay.
hardcore and holding out till the very end here, and hopefully see you all again next week.
Yes, and remember common clusters next week as well.
Yes, yes. Actually, I owe Lasinka was asking about a speaker, and I'm seeing here whether we might be able to get Amar Jafri from Pakistan or Ashok Patel from the Mayo Clinic to perhaps get one of their contacts. A couple of people. There's a senator in the Pakistani government that is very much aware of things that are going on and involved. But depends if we're looking, because one of the things, actually, this was another topic I had for the list for today, um, because people are saying a lot of the agentic efforts to automate processes using AI in companies have not delivered the results. There's still too many errors so a lot of the companies have discontinued their efforts to deploy AI agents at this time. And people are thinking because of that, they're thinking here, oh, it doesn't make any difference that uh, um, AI is just not going to go anywhere. But in reality, what we're seeing is AI is unstructured, is dealing with unstructured information and unstructured responses to questions. But what we're not seeing so obvious is that a lot of AI is being used to convert unstructured situations into structured situations. If we think of self-driving cars, in the beginning, it's very easy to say, oh, there's something in front of the car, stop. There's something coming in from the right, turn left. So, you start off with a dozen different actions, a dozen different situations that it recognizes, and a dozen different actions. And once you got those down, you go and say, okay, what are some other things that might happen? Oh, if we're backing up, this comes. Oh, if it gets dark, turn the lights on, and things like that. And so we keep nibbling away and discovering more and more situations where we're able to describe what the action is. So in computer terms, we call these decision trees. So we start off saying, if this is the situation, then look at this, and if that's the situation, then take path B or take path A. And so what's happening is machine learning is in many cases turning unstructured knowledge and situations into structured knowledge. And this is what's enabling the lights out factories to be developed around the world. So we see China is moving forward extremely aggressively. It's a national policy to replace all human workers with AI and robots. So this is happening very, very fast. We have the majority of countries in place are still saying we have to protect the human worker. We have to protect employment. But you have a handful of the countries that are leading that are saying no, we're going to replace this. So we're seeing a lot of work that maybe used to take 20 hours being driven down to 2 hours, which frees up about 90% of the work effort that would have been required in the past. So if we count those types of developments that are taking place, that's where most of the job loss is going to take place. It's not going to be AI. It's not AI that's going to replace you. In some cases, it's going to be a human using AI that will replace the job. But in many cases, it's AI redesigning and automating processes that are going to replace you. Because 80 to 90% of all actions taking place that around the world in work are based on standard operating procedures. In other words, if this happens, you as the worker are expected to do something specific. And it's hard for humans to remember all the different things they need to do. And in some of those cases, once we're able to define exactly this is the expected course of action in a particular situation, and we now have the sensors to be able to determine whether we're in that situation or not, then these things can be automated. That's happening independent of the so-called AI job replacement. And that's probably going to replace the majority of jobs in the near future. And actually, it's very interesting because
Okay, I gotta run, guys. Sorry.
yeah. Anyway, off topic.
So
Off
Bill, I
topic.
might give you a call to yeah. I might give you a call to talk about just a little bit of help for setting up my website with the marketplace.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's okay.
Sounds good.
So
Okay.
I'll send you an email. Anyway, guys,
Okay.
talk
Yes.
to you soon.
Have a nice.
Okay.
I have
Bye now.
my next week. I have my
Bye-bye.
last class, so after that, I will be able to join again.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye
Okay.
now. Have a good week,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Same.